flying over, devastating your country, because the Americans are going to return fire on this one. They're definitely going to seek and destroy those who've sought to seek and destroy their country.
And, you know, 3 weeks ago, this man's come out and said, you know, there will be attacks on the West.
He said there will be. I'm mounting a devastating attack. He said it would be a great and huge, devastating attack on the United States of America. Now that that attack has happened, he's saying that he had no involvement in it. I mean, I don't know what the American intelligence know, but they know an awful lot more than us, and they will have been tracking this man's movements. They will have been tracking, in this day and age, his communications, because the Taliban foreign minister, which we've spoken to, said, no, we don't allow him to communicate with the outside world. That's one of the conditions in which he resides in our country. But as you quite rightly say, how do you stop people making mobile telephone calls these days?
Indeed, New York at the moment is in a state of emergency, in a state of shock, of course, as well. There's been an urgent plea for blood in New York. All mobiles, interestingly, have been suspended, Mike, because, as you said, they're used to detonate the bombs.
They're used for two things. One, the communication between terrorists, of course, takes place on mobiles because they're independent of any landline or land technology. And secondly, as you quite rightly say, the mobile phone I've got, I can also use as an alarm clock, which I do when I'm away on business. I program the thing, I set it, put it next to the bed, 4:30 a.m. It goes off and it vibrates and it makes a noise. Well, you can understand how that can, of course, be used as a timing device to trigger a bomb, and for that reason, use of all mobiles in America has been banned and the networks have been closed down. So that's another terrible impediment to business, of course. I know we shouldn't be talking about business when thousands of lives are at risk, but the whole idea of these devastating attacks today was to close down America, and bit by bit the terrorists are succeeding at what they set out to do this morning.
And not only is it something to stop America in terms of its finance and as, you know, the leader, if you like, of the capitalist world, it's also, I think, as one commentator mentioned earlier, it's a mental thing, isn't it? It's to get inside the brains of the Americans, inside the brains of the Western world, and say, fear. It's time for paranoia, in a way.
Yeah, what American will feel safe now on his own soil? What American will feel safe in Chicago if he goes into the Sears Roebuck building, which is the tallest building in America, and for many years was the tallest building in the world until it was overtaken by the towers in Malaysia? But I mean, if you worked on the top floor of the Sears Roebuck building in Chicago, I'm sorry, would you want to go to work tomorrow morning? I'm not sure I would. The only other thing I can say is, Rich, that I'm actually going to the United States in about a month's time. It's a part business, part leisure trip, a few days of business followed by seeing a few friends there. I'm going to Manhattan. I'm staying in a hotel in Manhattan. Unless the American authorities tell me not to go, I am determined to go, because this is the sort of time when America needs support from its allies in Europe and the Western world, and I should imagine very, very few people will voluntarily be going to America over the next few weeks, following these devastating, horrendous attacks which have cost thousands of lives in Manhattan and in Washington today.
Yeah, just to reiterate that, because people, might be trying to contact people. If you are trying to contact someone you know that's in and around the area and they've got a mobile phone, don't panic just because you can't get through to them. It is that all mobiles have been suspended. The emergency number, though, if you want to try and find out some details, I don't know how much detail you will be able to get from this emergency number, but there is one available. The number for it is 0207 008 0000, 0207 008 0000. You're listening to Talksport on a day of terror and bombings and suicide plane crashes into buildings, a day that's devastated the United States of America and its repercussions, of course, felt throughout the world. Let's get some more updates to you from the Sky News Centre with Martin Smedley.
Good evening, it's 6:05.
There was an airplane actually going into the World Trade Center, and flames were coming out and smoke was just billowing in the air.
There's been an incredible and devastating wave of terrorist attack across the United States. 2 hijacked planes have crashed into and destroyed the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York. There could have been around 20,000 people inside the buildings. A third hit the Pentagon and another's gone down in Pittsburgh. American fighter aircraft are now patrolling the skies, ready to shoot down any more terrorist planes. The loss of life has been described as tremendous. Earlier, an eyewitness, Sylvia, told Fox News in New York what she'd seen.
I heard a loud rumbling, and when I walked out of the deli on Fulton Street, I looked up in the air. There was an airplane actually going into the World Trade Center, and flames were coming out, and smoke was just billowing in the air, and tons of people were running down Fulton Street, just running each other over, and I made my way back to my office on Water Street. And when I got upstairs, I looked out my window to see what was going on, and the Second World Trade Center just went into flames, just from 1 minute to the next.
And Sky's Keith Graves, who's in Washington, tells us what happened at the Pentagon.
An aircraft flew into a helicopter that was actually parked right at the side of the Pentagon on the VIP helipad, and then it careered into a corner of the building. That corner of the building collapsed. The Pentagon has been evacuated, though we understand that the war room beneath it, which is secure, is still being manned.
Some breaking news. We're just hearing that Israel has closed its airspace to incoming flights from foreign airlines for 24 hours. We'll bring you more on that as we get it. American Airlines has confirmed 2 of its aircraft had been involved. There were 156 passengers and crew on board. And United Airlines says 2 of its planes were also hijacked and crashed. One plane was flying from Newark to San Francisco, the other from Boston to Los Angeles. United says there were 110 people on those aircraft. Aviation security expert Philip Baum says the attack is terrorism at its worst.
If you look at what's happened in aviation security since Lockerbie, most of the emphasis has been on trying to identify bombs that could have been infiltrated onto an aircraft to prevent an act of sabotage. Whereas traditionally the old-style aviation security was focusing on hijacking, and this is really where the two meet, hijacking aircraft to carry out the worst possible attacks of sabotage.
Here, the Queen has expressed her growing disbelief and total shock. In a message to President Bush, she expressed heartfelt sympathy and said her thoughts and prayers were with the Americans. Tony Blair's described the outrage as the most terrible, shocking event, and the Tory party has postponed tomorrow's planned declaration of the result of its leadership election. It's been put back 24 hours as a mark of respect for those who lost their lives in the American terrorist tragedy. Security's also been tightened at London's 3 main airports, and flights to the States have been cancelled. Hundreds of passengers are stranded. Foreign Secretary Jack Straw's offered the US government every help in catching the terrorists.
We've also told the United States government that we stand ready to give whatever help we can to assist in tracking down the perpetrators behind this evil and ensuring that they are brought to justice.
Now, as you heard earlier here on Talksport, going live now to George Bush.
But nevertheless, President Bush. We have some problems.
We don't appear to be able to go over to George Bush at the moment, but we'll bring you his statement live as soon as we get it. Now, as you've been hearing, the prime suspect for the attacks is Saudi dissident Osama bin Laden. He warned 3 weeks ago that he and his followers would carry out an unprecedented attack on US interests for its support of Israel. The statement was relayed to Abdel Bari Atwan, the London editor of the London-based Al-Quds news magazine. He told Sky News, and we can actually go back to George W. Bush now.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward.
Again, we have problems with what President Bush had to say.
Some other news regarding today's incidents. A plane carrying Prince Andrews to the United States has turned round in midair. He was due to fly to Atlanta today and then to New York. And the Duchess of York was intending to head across New York to the World Trade Center today. She hadn't set off when the building was destroyed. Finally, the Foreign Office is warning British citizens to take extra care. And we can go over to George W. Bush for a third time, hopefully successfully.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning by a faceless coward. And freedom will be defended. I want to reassure the American people that the full resources of the federal government are working to assist local authorities to save lives and to help the victims of these attacks. Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down and punish those responsible for these cowardly acts. I've been in regular contact with the Vice President, Secretary of Defense, the National Security Team, and my cabinet. We have taken all appropriate security precautions to protect the American people. Our military at home and around the world is on high alert status. And we have taken the necessary security precautions to continue the functions of your government. We have been in touch with the leaders of Congress and with world leaders to assure them that we will do whatever is necessary to protect America and Americans. I ask the American people to join me in saying a thanks for all the folks who have been fighting hard to rescue our fellow citizens, and to join me in saying a prayer for the victims and their families. The resolve of our great nation is being tested, but make no mistake, we will show the world that we will pass this test. God bless.
Let's just round up today's stories then after that statement by US President George W. Bush. There's been an incredible and devastating wave of terrorist attacks across the United States today. 2 hijacked planes have crashed into and destroyed the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York. It's thought there could have been around 20,000 people inside the buildings at the time. A third hit the Pentagon in Washington, and another has gone down near Pittsburgh. All of those in the northeast of the United States. Finally, the Foreign Office is warning British citizens overseas to take extra care. They've issued an emergency number as well for anyone worried about relatives in America. It's 0207 008 0000. So that's the London number. It's 0207 008 0000. And that's the latest from the Sky News Centre. We'll bring you more updates as we get them.
Well, good evening. This is Talksport. We hope you are safe and well, and the same goes for your friends and relatives. This is Talksport on 1089 and 1053. And it's John Driscoll and Mike Parry with the responsibility to keep you up to date with the terrible events. It's one of the blackest days in the history of the world, and that's no exaggeration. It's the single worst day of terrorist activity ever. The death toll is impossible to estimate. There are 10,000 people estimated to be at work in each of the 2 Twin Towers. Could have been 5,000 visitors in there as well. More deaths as well when the towers collapsed, and more in the Pentagon as well. The seriousness of it is absolutely, impossible to overestimate, and the human cost as well. We've seen pictures coming in here from the various American news networks of people being carried out, and the problems that the emergency services have had as well, because they have to make the areas safe, because there's always a danger of more buildings collapsing. And then we just heard as well that the blood supplies are running short in Washington and New York, and the repercussions of this are going to be discussed for some time. But we've got it very quickly here from Ehud Barak, the former Israeli Prime Minister.
On our very way of life, and we have to stand firm and to struggle back.
You do say that you think this is linked to Mr. bin Laden, possibly. He's denied it, we understand, through the Afghan authorities. Also, there's been a denial from Hamas that they were responsible. Do you not accept those?
No, the world is not the same place from this explosion on. It doesn't matter who personally initiated it beyond the very focus that should be given to him. We are facing a major attack on our very way of life, and there is no way but to join hands, stand firm, coordinate among the whole world leaders, United States, UK, Europe, Russia, Japan, Israel and Australia, whoever wants to join, to launch the same kind of fight that our forefathers gave to the piracy on the high seas. Namely, terrorists should not be allowed to land at any port or airport for this matter, and whoever hosts them. And we all know the names of the terror rogue leaders. We all know the names of the terror thugs. We all know